Hello and welcome to another episode of the UConn Daily. This is Aman Kidwai, joined by John Silver. We apologize for the radio silence from the last week. We had a little bit of challenges navigating the Big East tournament schedule with those late games and trips to New York for myself. I had the pleasure of checking out those games in Madison Square Garden as the Huskies beat Villanova. Another comeback for the Huskies against Villanova on Thursday night in the quarterfinals. Then they fall to Creighton in the semifinals, another semifinal loss for the Huskies in the Big East tournament. They now are looking ahead to the NCAA tournament, where they are going to face Oklahoma after earning an 8 seed and being placed in the West region. We'll talk about that, as well as the bracket lie and field for the women's team, who got a 2 seed. We'll talk about that. John, thoughts and feelings after men in the Big East tournament beating Villanova on Thursday, losing to Creighton on Friday. A lot of the same, I suppose.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I think Creighton deserved to win the game. I mean, we can quibble with maybe, and I'm so happy to be over the Big East because I'm having heartburn over the officiating. But I'll be real clear. I'm not some like a super psychotic fan who thinks that's the reason why UConn lost. It just doesn't help them to play like that. There always seems to be an issue with disparity. And if you look at those two games, they're plus minus 10 from the free throw line in each of those games. And if that continues in the NCAA tournament, that is going to cause them to lose. And it could happen. There's virtually no way I can see them advancing the NCAA tournament if that free throw disparity is that big, not with the bracket they have. So overall, very good against Villanova. Very, very good in the second half. I liked what I saw in the Creighton game, but you can't get down 17 like that. The defense was as poor as I've ever seen it from a UConn team in a big spot. Now Creighton's good. Doug McDermott is a great coach. Maybe he'll be at Indiana next year. Who knows? But and they run really good offensive sets. So it's like kind of they're not playing a team that's not skilled. I mean, Ainsworth and Kalkbrenner are they're going to get their pension from the NCAA soon. So like when you get that kind of veteran players on there who are talented, it makes it real tough to guard. But 75% from the floor, I mean, Peyton's good. They're not that good. I mean, that was like they made those guys look like Bill Walton in UCLA in '72 or something. I was just floored at their lack of ball pressure, quite frankly, in that game. And you know we've seen all year. We've seen the Jekyll and Hyde team. They get down by 17, and then like a snap, they're back in it. And there's there's two things is I think they're defensive issues, and maybe they're ball handling or they're just athleticism. I don't know what it is, but there's something that is going to cause them to get out of the tournament this year. Either it could be in the second round because they're just beat by a better team, or they could lose in the first round. Well, that's who they were all year. But then they show these flashes of where they look unstoppable. And then you can even make the case on Friday night if McNeely finishes some of those layups at the rim and absorbs the contact, they win. If they hit some shots that were wide open, I had no quibble with their offense except that they didn't make the shots. I thought they got great looks, but defensively, you can't win when you allow a team to shoot like that. I mean, it's impossible. So all in all, when we look at what came out Sunday, I was hoping for UConn Duke there. That would have been a lot more fun, even though I think Duke's best team. Because I wavered on Auburn. We'll see. Florida's going to be awful tough. I don't know much
Yeah.
about Oklahoma. I have to study. I figured they're a 9 seed. They're the 13th, 14th best team in the SEC. They're probably going to be a tough matchup. I assume UConn will be slightly favored in that game. We'll see what happens there. They don't look very big, which I think is helpful to UConn. I think Florida is going to win the whole thing now. So that second round game looks impossible to me. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, yeah, you can't overlook the first round opponent, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
13th in the SEC. The SEC was really really deep this year. I think no matter what, based on what we've seen, we know that UConn's inconsistent. We know to expect the unexpected, and some things eventually you can't just say it's like a crazy shooting night. If you're giving up really good shooting performances so frequently, there's a little bit of a pattern developing and emerging, and we know that, right? We know that there are defensive limitations. We know there are limitations at ball handling, and we know that their low post plays inconsistent.
Hmm.
I think we've seen a lot of really good stuff, a lot of really promising stuff from Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed across the last few weeks. But when they play better teams, when they play teams with size, they those guys struggle. And UConn, when it faces better teams, those weaknesses can be really, really exploited. And I think that part is going to be unavoidable. They're going to need a good game to beat Oklahoma. Obviously, I think at this point you can think of it as a toss-up. That's basically what it is on Ken Palm. It's a 1 point UConn advantage there on a neutral court. They're really close to each other. Analytically speaking, UConn's 35th, Oklahoma's 38th. They're actually both offense first teams, both much much better offensively than defensively. And with Oklahoma, some things that stand out. They are a good shooting team, 38th in
Hmm.
effective field goal percentage. They're good at getting to the free throw line, 29th in free throw to field goal ratio. And so, but they're not very good at rebounding. So I think, that rebounding represents a bit of an opportunity for UConn. They have not been amazing, but they've been doing solid again. They've been a lot better at it lately. And, I think that's a space for optimism there. I mean, just again looking back on the Big East tournament, um, I have to say I think the way that the Creighton loss went down was actually a bit more disappointing than any other loss on the schedule in a way, because UConn had no chance. UConn was really not you know, in the lead late in that game. There were a couple of runs in the second half to get it within three, within five, but that was it. That's in the second half. So, it was really kind of a dominant win for Creighton in that setting. And we were talking, okay, UConn's playing its best ball. Maybe they are better than something that we saw in late January or February, but I think the defensive problems persist. And then if the offense encounters some challenges, even for a few stretches during a game, that's a problem. So, looking ahead at the bracket, Oklahoma, anything can happen. That game's in Raleigh. It's at 9:30 p.m. 9:25 p.m. tip off there, and I just think it's not a ton going to really surprise us at this point beyond who can stand out, who can avoid a cold shooting night so that UConn stays in it. They still have a high ceiling. We'll see how high if they get a second round matchup against a one seed Florida. That's a real, not just a
Oh,
one seed. They're a tough team. I think it's they kind of made their bed when they landed in the 8-9 range to end the
yeah.
season. So at that point, you don't deserve the right to carry that much optimism into the postseason as an 8-9. You're in the bracket, right? You're in the bracket. You're going to be playing a really really good team in the second round. It's a tough lie for the guys here.
Yeah, it's funny, and I look at the seeding and where they're placed on the S curve. They beat Creighton, they probably get on the 7 line, right? If they won the Big East, which I didn't think they were beating St. John's anyways, but they probably get to the 6 line if they won the Big East tournament. When you count like maybe those two other wins against them, but they certainly deserve where they are. I don't think we can make any argument. I think they're seated perfectly for who they are right now. I mean, like even all our theories, all our hopes, you know what? They look about top 35 team in the country, but I wouldn't put them top 25 right now. I mean, you can only make a case, if you had to, proverbial, tell somebody they had to do it. But no, they've earned it. They earned that 8 seed, and that's an opportunity. I mean, I don't think they've ever, they've gotten to the second round. It reminds me of the Kemba, the year after Kemba Walker's title, and they were an 8 seed with Shabazz Napier, Jeremy Lamb, Andre Drummond, and DeAndre Daniels on the team. And Roscoe, I don't think Roscoe Smith. Roscoe Smith may have been there as well. I don't remember, but I vaguely remember that team as a bunch of sophomores. I
That was a
mean,
tough one.
you look back, yeah, you look back and you're thinking to yourself, how the heck did that team, with an all-time college point guard in Napier, with 2 NBA lottery picks in Drummond, who's still playing, and Jeremy Lane was an excellent player, and just flamed out to a bad Iowa State team with Royce White that got clobbered in the next game. Um, so, could that happen? Maybe. I think this team's, not as talented as that team, but it just goes to show you sometimes chemistry doesn't fit. Players are too young. I think we're asking a little too much from Ball and McNeely at this time, and we're not getting enough from, say, Mahaney and Caravan. Enough scoring or consistency. I mean, Caravan had a horrible game against Creighton. I mean, 4 points. I mean, every time he sneezed, he got called for a foul, but that still, it's just that inconsistency is who they are. For 20 minutes, I like UConn against anybody in the country. 40 minutes, that gives me a lot of pause because they haven't played a full 40-minute game against a good team in a while.
Yeah. It the upside comes from the fact that some of those 40-minute games did come in the non-conference slate.
Yeah.
And yeah, really you're hoping that outside of, like you mentioned, the refs, the rough slate, the rough style of the Big East, that this UConn roster in particular, right, that's better offensively, that has some guys who can move, that has a guy like Samson Johnson who can maybe do better in a more open game. Maybe someone like even Aiden Mahaney is better outside of Big East play. And even to some extent, the guys who have been leading them, like Ball, Caravan, McNeely, all are in a position to potentially thrive better in a more open type of game that's played with other referees.
Yeah.
That's it,
They,
though.
that's it. That's it. And none of them can have a bad game. I mean, they may be able to escape Oklahoma if one of Ball, Caravan, McNeely aren't stellar. But you're going to have two have good games against Creighton. I'd say only Ball. Offensively, he was brutal defensively, but offensively, Ball was the only one that had a really really good game against Creighton. Outside of that, against Florida, I don't even want to talk. Get listen. We could talk a Saturday morning if we're sitting here and UConn has a game because Florida, they would need a game that could challenge last year's team in a game because I think Florida's that good. I think they're better than last year's UConn team that won the title, obviously, but they have some major talent on that Florida team, and it's athletic and it's deep and it's talented and it's as good a college team as you're going to see. It's amazing how good these teams are. Like in the last couple of years, I take last year's UConn team and would go to any team in the last 15 years. And then this year's tournament, when you look at those SEC teams, and Rutgers didn't even make the NIT, and they have 2 lottery picks. It really, poor Steve, but it really. I just think with the older players and the NIL, players are staying longer, and then they're like, it's like free agency to sort of getting super teams. It is so good. The quality of basketball is probably the best it's been across the board in quite some time. So I think we're getting a great tournament. I think finally college basketball is back to playing really good basketball.
And just having, like you said, lots of good teams, and I don't want to say well put together teams because there still is, like you mentioned, that free agency element to it. But yes, there certainly has been a benefit of all these changes around college sports to college basketball. It's been huge. I mean, you can argue to talk about the decline of it, the one and done rule probably did a lot of damage. Putting those guys who had really no interest in college basketball at all, pursuing the college game. creating this market where kind of like the top 20-ish players are really kind of driving the talent conversation in
Mhm.
college basketball, but then team building kind of started to go by the wayside a little
Yeah.
bit as even Duke and UNC and Kansas just started loading up with freshmen and these super classes. And the strategy didn't play out super well for them. Like they were good, they
Mhm.
were consistent, but if you think about their recruiting results, all those teams should have won a lot more. They should have won a lot more championships. That was a period of instability too for a lot of different reasons, and just guys leaving early for the NBA
Yep.
being really challenging thing. And I think what's happening, it's happening in football and in basketball, where it's really that it's not about the top guys, but it's really about keeping those
Mhm.
guys who would be late or fringe draft picks and keeping them in college. And that the
Yeah.
effect it's having on retention, if you look at in football, the number of juniors declaring for the draft, declaring early, has decreased significantly. I don't have
Okay.
the numbers exactly in front of me. This is a basketball show, but this is a basketball episode. But
Yeah.
um, it's definitely had a significant effect in college basketball. The challenge is, I think it's had a detrimental effect to the mid majors who are really, really just they're losing more talent. Like they were
Yeah.
already disadvantaged, obviously, on the roster building and recruiting front, and now they can't even keep their good guys. They can't hold on to anyone.
Yeah.
If you're a mid-major program, and this applies to UConn football as well. If you're a mid-major basketball program and you think about your greatest players of your history, today those guys leave after their sophomore year. They don't
Yeah.
stick for their career. They don't have that mid-major style run. Different conversation for a
Mhm.
different day. But
Yeah.
the challenge for UConn is, again, some of the things we've been talking about all year. They won 2 championships. They sent 7 guys to the NBA. You can't win every single year. This is not the pros. You're not having roster consistency like that, and so
Mhm.
you're going to have to be building at some point. UConn
Mhm.
is building. They went into this season with a young roster, really young roster.
Brilliant.
Like you mentioned, Ball is a sophomore. Some guys that they asked to step up, it's sophomores. It's Mahaney's a junior transferring from the mid-major level. Uh, you got Jalen Stewart, who's done well, but hasn't kind of like broken out, hasn't kind of become like a Samson Johnson last year, off the bench level contributor. I mean,
Mhm.
not in terms of what he offers, what he contributes. Um, and so UConn is still building. UConn has a great recruiting class coming in. Like none of what is disappointing about this season changes that the future is bright.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
UConn
Exactly.
really, it boils down to those losses that should not have happened. You should not
Yeah.
have lost at Villanova. You should not have lost to Seton Hall. Literally just that. And let's say Colorado. Let's just, since we're
Well,
waving.
Memphis too. They had that game too.
Sure, sure.
I
But
mean,
let's say,
we go with them down the lines. There's like
we don't
six
have-
of them.
yeah, we don't need to go too far
Yeah.
to say if there's a slightly better record, which this team was
Mhm.
capable of. Slightly better record, but it was young. It wasn't, dealing with a lot. Um,
Yeah.
with a slightly better record, they have a slightly better lie in the tournament. They have a chance to do something, right? To cop a Sweet 16, to be a team you don't want to see in the second weekend.
Yeah.
And they kind of are a little bit short of that. They still have that ceiling where, again, Florida's not going to be excited to see them in the second round, but they're not
Mhm.
going to be like scared. It's not going to
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Exactly.
this sucks. So,
Mhm.
it is what it is. That was the season, right?
Hey,
Here we
hey,
are. You wonder what's going to happen. We had a blast, and there's a second season beginning now, and that's kind of the attitude, of course, that they have to take. We're not the coaches and players, but I think the realities of the team are what they are at this point, and you just have to kind of see where it lies.
the one thing that does concern me long term for the team is when we look at the effect of the super conferences on the seeding in the NCAA tournament. St. John's with what 30-4, and it's only lost their 4 games or by less than 10 points, and they're a 2 seed. I mean, you could make a case in the old Big East they would have been a 1 seed. Marquette a 7, which Marquette deserved, but Creighton and UConn both 8-9s. Xavier got in, so I was actually surprised on that. I thought West Virginia and Indiana would get in ahead of them. But good for Xavier. I'm happy to see it. I'll take the extra $50,000 that comes with the tournament credits. I'll do it then. I think, I get really concerned because unless you have a powerful, like, what's the avenue for UConn men getting a number one seed? Like, they go 30 and 5, 27-5 next year, and like 16-2 in conference, 18-2 in conference, and they can't get a number one seed. And if you're a 8, 9, 10 loss team, East Power Conference, like they're really close to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's like 13 basketball games. It does make me wonder, first off, the ACC is going to have to do something on the basketball side to get better at basketball. So we've talked about this ACC Big East merger. I think that's the way you have to go. You cannot allow the DePauls and Seton Halls, and I hate that we're getting on DePaul, but they've been the doormat forever. So make an NCAA tournament. Um, you know, it's really going to be tough for some of those teams like Providence, and then UConn, no more of these playing teams in the 300s. You can't do it. You got to go play a MAC team, a Metro Athletic Conference team. Go play Quinnipiac. Go play Yale. I know they don't. Those games might be a little too tough in December, but they can't match the SEC and Big Ten's strength of schedule because of the conference, and it's even bigger than when the Big East was at its heyday. It's like when they had 8, 9 teams. I mean, 14. There's 18 teams in the SEC. I mean, wow. You're never going to get over them. I don't think Missouri's much. I don't even think they're better than UConn. And Missouri's a 7 seed. And Texas A&M. I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong. They might be better than UConn this year, but that's a very high seed. Like Kentucky, a 3 seed. I mean, and Kentucky's good, but they're not. They're the fifth best team in the SEC. And it's going to be really difficult to hop over those major conference teams who play good basketball because, like, win carries you so far and the loss never hurts you.
Mhm. I I I agree that with this long-term concern, it's been a
Mm,
concern since, UConn was not even in this Big East conference to just say, look, that conference is is on shaky ground. I mean,
it
there were
is.
signs 10 years ago. I remember Buzz Williams getting hired from Marquette, who was
Mhm,
doing well, to Virginia Tech, right?
mhm,
Who was not doing well for a while, for a long while, who was kind of off the radar at this point in
mhm,
basketball by choice, probably. But I just thought that was a real signal for the money, right? The money. What is this all? What drives all of this? It's what you can do
mhm,
in coaching. It's what you can do in recruiting. What you can provide on facilities, and then recently what you can provide on NIL. And all these SEC schools, once you have that infrastructure, applying it to other sports to make more money is, of course, going to be part of their strategy. They've maximized their football
mhm.
earnings. They're going to keep maximizing it for folks who follow college football and the expansion of the playoff and the auto bids that the SEC is trying to arrange for itself in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see it in basketball. I mean, it's a more opaque process. We've seen tons of examples over the last few years of pretty egregious seeding or emissions from the tourney seed
Mm,
or inclusions, that are pretty clearly aligned to power conference um, allegiances. And this money concern doesn't go away. It's getting worse. The Big East is not making significantly more money, even if it gets a 50% raise on the next contract. That's not
it's
bridging
not
the
gonna cut
gap.
it.
And the Big East ACC merger idea can maybe be a piece of it, but it's not the answer. Like it's
You
not
need
the answer for
football.
anyone.
Yeah.
And so this money concern is a big deal. Now there's the House settlement, which means that schools will pay athletes directly as a result of the television contract.
Mhm.
This is going to mean there are different payment structures in every single league. And so, what can you say? It's not going to, we're seeing the fruits of that signs that we saw 10 years earlier playing out now. And yeah, I could not have imagined the SEC getting to this point by this year. But it's really a large scope of dominance. And
Mhm.
look at Seton Hall. Seton Hall had been decent, They lost their coach to Maryland. They fall down up via NIL, and now they're in the basement, and you're wondering what's the plan here? What's going to go on? So the Big East has a lot of cool things going for it. I love the coaches. I love the basketball focus for them. I think there's an attraction there, but I don't think it's going to win with players over lots of money. So
No, really. Yeah, I agree, man. Like, and it's players, and then if 14 from the SEC gets in, I mean, you can be a good player, be a good team. Uh, you know, I, um, that's a lot of teams to get in. The Big Ten probably could have had Ohio State and Indiana in it as well. They probably deserved it. Over North Carolina, that's a bad put in the committee. I like North Carolina. I hope Hubert Davis is great. You can't put North Carolina in over Indiana and West Virginia. That's awful.
yeah.
And I mean, like Indiana, I was like thinking like that we fallen that far, and now like Indiana's left out by North Carolina. I mean, it wasn't like it was Indiana State left out. It was Indiana was left out. So yeah, we'll see. I worry. I worry about just competing one, like you said, on the money side, but also UConn really needs to really look at its non-conference schedule. Maybe start scheduling like Gino. Maybe not that bad, but look what it did to North Carolina. They were 1-12 and quad one in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you lose the games. Who knows? You won't be that bad, but
I think UConn scheduled some. I think UConn scheduled a pretty tough out of conference slate. If you think about Baylor, Texas, Gonzaga,
they're
and
as good as some club. Yeah, that's what
and
happens.
Maui.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
Maui.
Maui.
They've gotten better matchups in Maui if they
I
won
know.
their first game or their second game. And yeah, for the three, I think the 300s thing is a big one.
Yeah, you
I
gotta get
think
out of
that
there.
was, I think that was Dan Hurley having a lot of concerns potentially about the team and truly wanting those to be pure exhibitions. But yeah, even by the fourth one, you could tell that even the players were out of it, right? That East Texas
Yeah,
game, they had all those turnovers and stuff. Yeah, I mean, but I think like in the previous years they were not playing that many. I guess they were.
mm,
They kind of were. So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I
It's
think they
different
can.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, they can play slightly better ones, and I think that's right.
Uh,
That when luckily they make these schedules in the off season, right? So it's
yeah, it's
it's
not
going to
like
be
football.
yeah, exactly. So at least you have the chance to calibrate based on what kind of team you believe you have. We're going to see what happens this offseason, right? No
Yeah.
speculation here. No, we'll see what happens on the roster. It's going to be a hectic time once the season ends, looking at everything, just like last year was, even after a title. But we will have to just, charge forward on that piece of it.
Yeah, no, during the tournament, I don't think UConn's in danger of getting on the bubble if they have a good season. But I just don't know if their seeding ceiling is lower than it was in the past, in 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Like it's going to be very hard for them to get a top number one seed at all in the new
Mm,
one. They'd have to do a 30 win, a 30-3 start to the year. Right?
yeah,
Start to the season. Like, you're not going to see 27-8 or something like in the Big Ten, or you'll see, I mean, somewhat like an 8 loss Alabama team as a 2 seed, an 8 loss UConn team is going to be a 5, and things like that. So it's something to keep an eye on. So let's, DePaul, Providence, raise your game. Let's go. You've seen
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Find a way. Don't go get Boston College back in the league. Go get somebody else. I mean,
yeah,
so maybe
yeah.
Gonzaga could be the chance. Like, they got to find ways, or else they're going to get picked apart. Because the Big
Mhm.
Ten is going to see what the SEC did, and the Big Ten might start going back to basketball. Obviously, that's something you guys would want. But maybe they get St. John's. Maybe they go for Villanova. I think we've talked about, or maybe they go for Georgetown. I don't know. But what I mean. Like they're going for markets, going for name brands, going for teams they think with money could win. I don't know. Well, we'll see. But
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I think just, again, looking forward for UConn, thinking about what kind of team they might have next year. I think you can expect them to build on this. I think they'll maintain most of their core. Well, they'll maintain a lot of their key players. They're gonna lose a couple of key players though as well. they're gonna be back on the trail of building. 3 McDonald's All-Americans coming in. You're gonna get
Yeah.
contributions from this freshman class. They're gonna hit the marketplace as well. And I think there's gonna be not much patience to build again. This year was kind of the year to kind of take that patience, mind that goodwill that exists from winning 2 championships. I think fans do feel that correctly right now with the proper perspective to say, how angry can you be after how glorious the last 2 seasons have been as for fans?
I mean,
But yeah,
they get to
yeah,
the second round. You take a shot. Like I think, I did this before the Big East tournament. What are my expectations? My floor expectations, where I wouldn't be super disappointed, would be they play a good game against Oklahoma. I hate when you don't want your team to have a bad performance in the first round, but if they play well and lose, tip your cap. Second round, if they can push Florida, say they get by Oklahoma, which I think is 50-50 seems about right. If they get by, I give them a 25% chance against Florida. So I mean, I think
yeah.
that they'll have a shooter's chance. And if they play well that game, then you go in. That's what the tournament's for. Maybe Florida has a bad day.
Yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
there was a feeling, about a month ago that, there was a slightly higher ceiling, which was
Yeah,
like, get a 7 seed, get a 6 seed, maybe even slightly higher, win 2 games, put up another Sweet 16 banner, and you say,
yeah,
well, that's still pretty good. You salvage, you finish strong,
yeah,
all of that stuff. But now I think that, the re the force of that optimism is a little bit muted and understandably so.
yeah.
Uh,
Florida's that good, folks.
yeah,
Florida's that good.
for sure. So we'll move on. The UConn women received their NCAA tournament placement as well on Sunday, landing a 2 seed. They'll be in the Spokane West region and setting up a potential Elite Eight matchup with the 1 seed in that region, USC. We don't love that matchup for them necessarily. We don't love that they'd be playing out west, which would be a big advantage for USC as well. John, thoughts on the state for the women heading into
I,
the tournament?
I hate the draw. I hate that they're not a 1 seed. But what's the difference if they're a 1 seed and USC is a 2 seed? So it'd be the same thing. I think they can get there to the Final Four. I just don't like the matchup against USC. I thought maybe the South Carolina blowout at South Carolina would overshadow the loss to USC earlier in the year. I mean, I think the best win from February on in women's college basketball was UConn blowing out South Carolina on the road. Like, and South Carolina is the number 2 seed. Well, the number 2 overall seed. Well, the number 5 seed overall blew your doors off in a highly anticipated non-conference game and showed no signs of losing since Tennessee. Um, but it goes back to Big East is not a good women's basketball conference. There's no competition there. And that's just what happens. USC beat UConn in the year, so it's hard to switch places. I was just, maybe hoping on hope that they could maybe get to the a 1 seed, like as the third 1 seed, number 3 on the S curve. But, it's right in front of them. I think those top 5 teams, the 4 number 1 seeds in UConn, are probably the 5 favorites for the national title. I have to make a case for NC State and Notre Dame, but I think we'll see one of those 5 cut down the nets. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was USC or UConn, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I think for UConn, take care of business, right? Get there.
Get there.
Don't worry about that matchup in the future. Just get there. Don't lose a game you should not. And I think you'll set up a really, really great Elite Eight game. I think it can. I think, of course, UConn has the potential to win that game and the ability to win that game. It's not like USC is some monstrous matchup there, but I maintain hope. I think just UConn being as healthy as they've been.
Yeah.
AZ Page, Sarah Strong, right? Very good supporting cast. I see a lot of reasons to be nothing but optimistic. And yeah, I mean, the Big East thing, we've talked about it before already. The Big East, it's a severe issue for the women's team.
Yeah.
It's if we'll have to give stronger words on that maybe in the future. But we've said our part, which is that what the hell, Big East women's basketball? Why aren't you better?
Yeah.
Why have you not raised your game as a result of UConn being in your league, and just out of some pride of what you have and what you've been?
Yeah.
But Marquette and Creighton are decent, but they don't seem to really have the juice to ever move up. They've been decent forever, so I
Yeah.
don't really, it's kind of reminds me of like South Florida. We were just like, yeah, oh yeah, South Florida, Fernandez, great coach. They're there. They'll be there. They made like one tournament. So that's not true. So
I know what you mean now. Yeah.
they didn't win a lot in the NCAA tournament. They would barely make it many years anyway. Um, it's even more severe of an issue. The league for the women, they schedule very
Yeah.
uniquely because of that. But I still think it hurts them because those games in between are just
Yeah.
almost all non-factors.
They have to go undefeated or one loss, or it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That'd have to be a one loss team. Maybe you get one. You get one loss. So you come when you get one loss a year, they're not going to be a 1 seed.
Yeah. So that game, the first game against Arkansas State, will tip off on Saturday at Gamble Pavilion. First 2 rounds will be in stores, and from there we shall see. The other team we want to just throw a quick shout out to. We don't have a ton to say because we can't follow everyone and everything, but UConn men's hockey's wonderful season continues. They're ranked in the top 10 in pairwise, sixth last time I checked, which is the highest they have ever been by a lot. They advanced in the Hockey East quarterfinals this past weekend, defeating Providence, which sets up a semifinal matchup in Boston's TD Garden against Boston University. Our guy Daniel Connell will, of course, be on hand for that. And the wonderful season continues. Just shout out to those guys. And for UConn fans, do what you can to if you're in Boston, of course, go to that game. It'll be on Nessun Plus, 4 p.m. on Thursday. So quit your job, get out of work early, support the Ice Bus. This is it's an incredible breakthrough for them. I think we can all we're equipped to say that. And they're going to be in the NCAA tournament, which will be the first time for them. It's really, really tough to make the NCAA tournament. Only 16 teams do it. It's an automatic formula. So great progress for UConn hockey. Hockey reporters said the environment in Toscano was really great as well. So I think great things brewing for the program there.
Yeah, I struggle understanding the game on the ice. I'm more of a hardwood kind of guy, but it's nice to see because I know the investment they've made over the last 20 years into the hockey program, and especially getting to Toscano. And after a disappointing year last year, as we had Dan on earlier this season on this podcast, and they've done a real nice job. Hey, we all love seeing baseball do well. We also love hockey. I think hockey's a sport. It's going to be a niche sport here, but it could do really well. There's really no reason why UConn can't be a great hockey school. And it actually fits its profile from region and what they want to do, size of the university pretty well. So it's just a matter of getting people there. And for people who've gone, it's good hockey. It's Hockey East. It's the best conference out there. And look what it's done for them. It puts them into the NCAA tournament, which, hey, maybe they get on a run, get a hot goaltender here for a couple of weeks. And next thing you know, they're hanging a Frozen Four banner at Toscano. That'd be
It's
nice.
definitely possible.
Yeah.
And at the very least, something to build on, right? They can continue to build on this. And I think that's the promising note that we can end this episode on. We'll be back later this week. Thank you all for watching.